Hey friends, my name is Kim Roman and I'm the owner of Square Foot Gardening for You. I've been teaching small space, high intensive, edible veggie and herb gardening since 2011. Today we're going to talk about emergency gardening, not alarmist gardening. Well, heck, I was in the military, so I could even call this combat gardening. I want this to be an empowering experience for you. We can't be afraid. We need to keep on going. And today, my goal is to get you started quickly and easily. I want you to think of this as temporary gardening. If you've been sent home from work and your kids are home with you from school, there's plenty you can do that's you're going to be able to help your family and with the bonus of for at least a little while keeping your kids off of screens. You can improve your immunity and your family's health by growing even just a little bit of your own food. Even a container of leaf lettuce on a sunny windowsill is going to help. Growing a garden can help boost your immunity in several ways, not just by growing your own immunity boosting nutritious food. I recently read an article talking about the 1918 influenza pandemic, and here's a quote. Excuse me, a little visually impaired. Put simply, medics found that severely ill flu patients nursed outdoors recovered better than those treated indoors. A combination of fresh air and sunlight seems to have prevented deaths among patients and infections among medical staff. Did you catch that? Fresh air and sunshine lowered the risk of contracting the virus for medical staff. And gardening will definitely get you and your kids outdoors in the fresh air and sunshine. So, first, please do not start a large traditional row garden unless you've already got one prepared and already know how to garden. And why not? Number one, it's too labor and resource intensive. You have to buy a lot of tools and either rent or buy a rototiller. And number two, row gardening uses your native soil, which I'm going to address in a minute. Number three, gardening should be fun and not a huge chore. And let me tell you, row gardening is not a lot of fun to start one up. Small space veggie gardening means that the kids are going to be able to help and they're not going to be whining that it's too hard. Plus, you can easily keep smaller children out of a smaller garden as opposed to a larger one just by fencing in a certain area. So, we're going to talk about small space gardening. And what is that? The two biggest classifications of small space type gardens are raised bed gardening and container gardening. You can tell by the name of my business, Square Foot Gardening for You, that that is really what I'm used to teaching and what the method that I love so much. And it is a type of raised bed gardening. So I've been a certified instructor since 2010. And yes, down the road, I would love for you to consider learning about this method in the future. But right now, I'm covering emergency gardening. If you don't have raised beds or fancy containers, don't worry. My first hint for you is that the cheapest thing you can grow in are these canvas tote bags. You've got a ton of them in the house already. Every time you walk into a place, you would get one. And they're only going to last a season, but that's okay. This is meant to be a temporary garden. If you find you really love gardening, then you can save your money and invest in better equipment for next year. But put these temporary grow bags in the proper location. That's the next hint. If your crop is grown for the seed, the leaves or the roots, which would be peas. Peas, you're going to eat the seeds. And the lettuces, you're going to be eating the leaves. And of course, carrots are root vegetables. So if it's grown for the seeds, leaves, or roots, you really can get away with just about 4 to 6 hours of sunlight. If it's grown mainly for its fruits, which are your tomatoes, your peppers, your eggplants, then it is going to need about 6 to 8 hours of sun. In most cases, you do not want to use your native soil, and that's the stuff that's out in your yard right now. You don't know what harmful things are in it. And right now, you don't have time to do a soil test. Excuse me. So many times, older homes have lead paint chips in the soil, and new construction is going to probably have paint and adhesives, drywall mud, and hundreds of things like that. Besides, the dirt that they put in your yards nowadays contain little, if any, nutrients and is not really good for growing plants. So earlier on, I was saying soil, and now I just mentioned dirt. What's the difference? A good soil is teeming with wonderful beneficial microbes, while dirt is devoid of anything that grows nutritious food. Basically, dirt is dead and soil is alive. So I encourage you to buy the best soil that you can find. Nowadays, many garden centers are offering curbside delivery. So you place your order online, pay for it, and then they'll just have it out along the sidewalk waiting for you. But buy the best that you can afford. And I'm going to recommend that it be organic soil if at all possible. Try to find a local source of compost if you don't already make your own. Many states that are on kind of a lockdown or a home, you're supposed to stay at home orders, have set aside like exceptions for agriculture businesses. So if you can find a local compost maker, maybe they also are making bagged soils. So the better the soil, the more nutrients your crops are going to take in, and the better those crops are going to feed your body. And the better your body is being fed, you can improve your your total health. And good compost is critical for any garden. Always make sure to make or buy extra compost because you're going to be adding this constantly, every couple of weeks throughout your garden so that you don't have to really you depend on other types of fertilizers. So watering, you're going to need to research everything that you're going to plant and how much water it needs. A good rule of thumb is to stick your finger in each of the grow bags kind of around the perimeter of it. If it's still damp, you do not need to water it. If it's dry, you should water it. And the best way to water is to have like a bucket of sun warmed water out the day before. Some of the chlorine is going to dissipate, and but right now we can't really worry too much about that. It's especially critical when you're growing tomatoes to make sure that you're consistently watering it. I encourage you to get your kids involved in this or your grandkids. My three grandchildren love being out in the garden with me. If you use a method of gardening that's easy and does not involve a lot of hard work like the row garden, they're more likely to help and less likely to whine about it. And it's proven that most children are more likely to eat something that they've grown themselves. Now, we've talked about soil and water. Let's talk about seeds. Right at this stage, I'm going to tell you that anything goes. Of course, using organic seeds or heirloom seeds are, the best in my opinion. But I feel that growing vegetables from non-organic seeds has to be better than what you're currently buying in the grocery store. So, my suggestion, and I've seen them in several of the different dollar stores, is go to places like Dollar Store, Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, whatever the dollar store is in your area, and buy your seeds. So, what seeds should you buy? Basically, anything that your family already likes to eat. I'm all for experimenting with new veggies, but right now, if you can, only grow what you and your family currently like. If your weather is still cold, you might need to start seeds indoors, and I'm going to make that easy for you too. You're going to take two paper cups. One of them is going to have holes at the bottom, and the other is not. Then you're going to take either put some pebbles in the one that does not have the holes in it, pebbles, or here's a cap from a water bottle. You probably have a couple of those lying around now. And then you take the cup with the seeds and place it on top. And then you're going to fill it with some good soil. And pretty soon, if you give it a lot of strong light, you're going to get some seedlings popping up. So, you're going to need a very sunny window or a strong supplemental light. And you're going to need to put these plants as close to the light source as possible. And when it's this tall, and then you're going to either move this down or move this up. So it needs a strong light. If you've got really good weather right now, go ahead and take the seed trays or the seed starting cups, take them outdoors only for a few hours at a time, and then make sure to bring them back up, especially if the nights are cold. And spring and fall crops don't require as much light as I told you. You could get away with 4 to 6 hours of outdoor light. Root crops, like we talked about, that are the ones that you eat for the roots, the carrots, the radishes, parsnips, things like that, beets, turnips, rutabagas, I can go on. They do not like to be transplanted. So those are not suitable for starting indoors. You're going to want to, if you have the ability right now to grow them outdoors, that's great. Or grow them indoors in a container and then take the container outdoors when the weather gets better. Now, that's all the time I can spend on teaching you actual gardening at this time, but here are some final suggestions. Remember that this is just a way for you to immediately start a garden. It's not meant to be the permanent way you garden. So I suggest researching different, easy, small space gardening methods. Or, if you like it, a lot of hard work and spending a lot of time out in the garden, then, study row gardening. For every crop that you grow, you should learn right now what pests or diseases that it might be prone to. Then research for organic methods to stop them. Some of them, like worms and caterpillars, you can just hand pick them off and, squish them if you're nice, or drown them if you really enjoy torturing them. But I know that's being glib, but if it's at this stage, it's coming down to feeding you and your children, or the bugs getting them and ruining things. I'm sorry, combat gardening. There are even some disease and pest controls that you can make yourself. I'm not sure about the effectiveness of any of those, but it's worth trying. Research ways to protect your garden from critters. Like if you've got things like broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower and root vegetables and things like that do not need pollinating, they're the ones that usually get bothered by the caterpillars and the worms. Take some nice light mesh material, or if you have it, row cover, nice light material, and put that over the raised bed or the containers or whatever you're growing in. And that is going to stop the moths from landing on those and depositing their eggs, and then those are what turns into those caterpillars and worms. So if you can prevent that, you don't have to kill them. So the next suggestion would be to start small. And that means just a couple of crops, a few crops at a time. If you try to grow too many new things and you're not familiar with gardening, you're going to quickly be overwhelmed. If you're looking to save money, the best things to grow are herbs and your good lettuces. And in the spring and fall, you can grow leaf lettuces, greens, root vegetables, peas, beans, cabbage, broccoli, and a lot of the herbs. At this time, if it's still cold, you can start your summer veggies. This is a good time to start summer veggies in many cases, and that would be your peppers, your eggplants, squash, melons, and you can start them indoors while you're waiting for your weather to warm up. Another piece of advice I'd give is to take gardening classes. Yes, you're right, the chick in the video who teaches gardening classes wants you to take a gardening class. If you're good at reading a book and implementing what you read, that's great. Go ahead and do that. I would suggest it. The all new Square Foot Gardening book, third edition, is what I recommend. I think right now it's on Amazon for $15 or less. This is a great time to pick it up. I can't even compete with Amazon when I sell books. If you find another garden instructor or another instructor that's teaching a different method, and I do teach all methods, a lot of methods, and you click with them better than me, that's also great. But yes, I'm not going to apologize. I make a living by teaching small space, high intensive vegetable gardening. And I would love for you to consider taking one or more of my upcoming online classes. At least 20% of the profits of my business go to help nonprofits in my area that help the homeless, at-risk youth, veterans, and those in food deserts. The fastest way you can get updates is from me is to follow me on Facebook at Square Foot Gardening, the number 4 and the letter U, Square Foot Gardening for you. And periodically I do Q&A sessions on Facebook Live and things like that. You can also go to my website, SFG, the number 4, the letter U. So that's S as in Sam, F as in Frank, G as in garden, the number 4, and the letter U. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And just let me know, share this video with your friends and come on to Facebook and join me. Thanks.